Welcome to Second Take, the show that focuses on the issues behind the news. This week, the latest version of the Industrial Policy Action Plan was released. Terence Creamer joins me to discuss some of the highlights. Terence, welcome to Second Take. We seem to have a lot of plans in South Africa. How does the IPAP fit into what is contained in the new growth path and what the National Planning Commission is doing?
As you say, we've got no shortage of plans. The problem often comes down to implementation. But the way it fits in is that we have the Planning Commission, which is doing really long-term sort of vision statement stuff. And that's not really government policy at the moment. So you've got commissioners that are drawn from civil society. And we've got Minister Trevor Manuel, who's the only real government official within the commission that looks at what does South Africa look like in 30 years. And they put out a report last year, and there is quite a lot of excitement about that. But it's not government policy yet. There's still discussion around it. And it is likely to be firmed up in some way and start influencing government policy. Then you have the new growth path, which comes out of Ibrahim Patel's department. And that really is policy. It's the way we plan to invest or to shape the economy, and to really, it's about job creation, 5 million jobs by 2020. And within that plan, there's a lot of focus on the productive sectors of agriculture, mining, construction, and trying to leverage, for instance, off the infrastructure program as much as possible to get the economy, which is facing a number of headwinds at the moment, whether they are domestic or international global headwinds, to try and keep it going on in a growing economy, as well as to be more jobs intensive. So that is government policy, and within that there's the very specific Industrial Policy Action Plan program of action, which tries to take the elements mostly from the new growth path, but to a certain extent as well from what's emerging as a more longer term plan, and put them into a sort of an action document. And that's what was released this week in the form of IPAP 3, or the third version, which it's actually going to be updated. It gets updated annually. So we have quite specific action plans around, especially building up the manufacturing base, reindustrialization, but also other things around the green economy and biofuels. So it's sort of quite broad-based, but it has a very strong focus on manufacturing and reindustrialization.
Are there any new elements contained in the latest version?
Well, I think a lot of disappointment was expressed about that there's a lack of newness to the IPAP 3. But I think that's not how it's going to work. We're talking about a plan that gets updated annually, or action plans that get updated annually. But generally, the main thrusts remain, and they get drawn from the new growth path and other documents. And those main thrusts have been known for some time, and they are really long-term thrusts. It's about reindustrialization, it's about rebuilding the manufacturing base, it's about restarting agriculture in some ways and getting agro-processing going. It's about the new industries in the green economy, as well as things like biofuels. So I think these are sort of long-term horizon issues. They're not something that you can change willy-nilly, and you're not going to be chopping and changing. So there are not a lot of new elements in the plan. There's some new action plans around the different elements, especially in the sectors around capital equipment and metals and around automotive. But there's not a lot of new in the sector plan. But what is new is that it's coupled with the manufacturing enhancement program or incentive that's coming through. So it's a manufacturing competitiveness is the focus of this incentive. It's a 5.8 billion incentive, which has been approved through the budget process, which is the other plan that comes out annually and is revised and actually gives the financial muscle to be able to implement all these different initiatives of government. And it's 5.8 billion, and it's dedicated specifically to the manufacturing industry, which is facing these difficult conditions, outside of those that have sector-specific programs. So the automotive has its own sector-specific program, and the clothing and textile industry has its own sector-specific program, and so does the business process outsourcing sector. But outside of that, all the other general manufacturing industries can access this nearly 6 billion over the next 3 years. And it's really focused at the factory floor level and improving rapid manufacturing upgrading of facilities, and the other thing is to upgrade processes and plant. And then lastly, there will be some targeted skills, money set aside for some targeted skill initiatives in the manufacturing milieu. So it is a new incentive over and above the incentives that are already in place, the generic ones, as well as this more specific one, over and above the 12-hour tax incentive for large manufacturing investments. So it is new, fresh money. Is it enough? Well, I suppose the manufacturing industry, being in such a difficult state, really at this stage can't say, because we've really been losing traction in this sector for so many years, and to try and get things going again is quite difficult. And we've got this element that's trying to buoy it, and especially in this time of where you saw with the business confidence figures coming out, it's back to a 3-year low type. There are a lot of concerns about the where we export to is largely, especially our manufactured products, luckily largely Africa, so that's still growing, but Europe is a key destination, and that's really not in good shape. As well as there's a lot of other issues around the international environment that are not very healthy. And this is one of the proactive steps to try and shore up manufacturing during what could be a difficult time, hopefully not as bad as 2009 when we went into recession and we lost 1 million jobs. 200,000 of those came from manufacturing, which is a lot if you consider manufacturing is a fairly small part of the economy now, that they were such a big contributor to those job losses. So it's really about shoring that up. And the other, I suppose, new element to RPAP 3 is the focus on regional integration, which I think also makes sense in terms of some of the trade work we're doing around the COMESA, East Africa community, as well as SADC joining up. And a target date of 2013 has been set for possibly launching that free trade from Cape to Cairo. And therefore there's a focus on how do we integrate industrial policy as well as industrialization elements into this bigger vision of a trading liberalization. Because what is quite clear is that non-tariff barriers are actually the bigger impediment to trade, between intra-African trade, which remains very low at around 10-12% of our trade as South Africa. It's not a lot of the trade that happens in Africa. Generally what happens is you mine something, you take it to the coast, and it gets exported out, and then your value-added products come back in, whether you're South Africa or whether you some other country. There's not much trade, except for South Africa does those value-added exports into Africa, and it's an important part of our manufacturing industries. It supplies into that. It's for its demand. So that is a new element, and it's something that we'll see probably getting more and more emphasis, especially as the infrastructure cross-border infrastructure programs potentially start to take place.
Green industries and localization also received some prominence in this plan. Could you elaborate on what was said in this regard?
Yes, green industries, we've got this big renewable energy program, 3,725 megawatts of capacity that the Department of Energy and National Treasury are in the process of procuring. We've got the first preferred bidders already announced. We've got the next round of preferred bidders to be announced in May. So it's starting to really take shape now. And there's a lot of potential to supply into those projects. The wind and solar and biomass and biogas and all these different energy generation solutions that we're not used to. And the sort of, again, and then there's the biofuels element. So there's this whole thing about trying to build an industrial base around this green economy or green industries, around the green energy thrust, primarily. And that gets quite a lot of prominence again in the RPAP. But I think this time, things are closer, because we're going to start seeing shovels in the ground, hopefully this year, for some of these projects. And then the big, thrust of government is the infrastructure program, 845 billion over the next 3 years, multi-trillion program over the next 20 years. So to try and say that this is not just about building infrastructure that will support growth in future of the industries that consume that infrastructure, but we could also supply inputs, more and more inputs, like the green energy, like the wind turbines, but also into the infrastructure program more generally. So that's a big part about calibrating the infrastructure program with the Industrial Policy Action Plan. It's a big theme, and I think it will be a theme people will be disappointed with. There's nothing new next year again, but it'll be a theme that is sustained for quite some time. And we are seeing the government procurement system is being also calibrated to this. So specific sectors have been designated for local procurement by government departments and state-owned enterprises, and I think we'll see another round of designations quite soon. Obviously, we've also seen the unhappiness this week from the steel sector saying, wow, we're not designated. Why can imported steel be considered for some of these programs almost as a local input? And that is going to be, I think, a continual theme and fight. But I think that fight goes back many years, and it's not just about the designations. It's about the way South African steel producers price, and government wants it done in a different way. And I think they'll use all leverage that they can, including the designations, to try and get them to the table and try and get somewhere. Whether we will ever get resolution to this is a matter, we'll have to wait and see. But it's this designation issue. There's a potential windfall for the steel sector from this. I suppose government is trying to make sure it's not a super windfall, so they earn super profits from it. But we do want to sustain the manufacturing of steel, the production of steel, and I think there will be some effort at a meeting of minds. But at this stage, there is a standoff, and we'll have to just wait and see how that standoff evolves.
Terence, thank you very much. That is the Second Take show for this week. Thank you for watching, and join us again next time for more news analysis.